All right. Let's see. This is what's going on.
I want to call out to everybody right now. These final hours, this is what's on the ballot. We should know in New Jersey how privileged we are. There are so many places in our country right now where people want to make sure that we have. This is what makes America great. The power to protest. The power to have free speech. The power of America.
This is what makes America great, the power to protest, as I try to silence the fucking protest.
Column A, all the way! Column A, all the way! Column A, all the way!
This is literally they're saying Burns. They're not saying boo, they're saying Burns. Boo earns. That's awesome. Crimson Wolf was there. Oh shit. What's he saying? I was a part of this protest. I am towards the front of the crowd recording for all those that started the chant. We wore gloves covered in red to symbolize the blood on America's hands. Booker tried to drown us out, but we overpowered him in the chant. We then marched into the hallways and outside with our hands up, demanding for a ceasefire. Booker ran within minutes. I saw his motorcade book it down the street. Minutes after the protest, we were part of the JVP, Jewish Force Peace, DSA, and AMP. Hell yeah. Bossabot clapped you. I'm sorry. I don't think half the chat understood the Simpsons reference. Yeah. That was a Simpsons reference, like an old Simpsons reference. That's great. This kind of stuff does work. I don't see how there can be a ceasefire without implicit acceptance of Hamas's brutal slaughter, rape, torture of Israelis, but enough people are talking about it that I might be misunderstanding. Can you explain how you come to that conclusion? Wait, what? You don't see how there can be a ceasefire without the implicit acceptance of Hamas's brutal rape, torture of Israelis? What do you mean? Okay. I want everyone to understand something. I talked about this on Twitter, but this is a good question because it's one that people it's one that people keep presenting, right? Like, obviously, it might be a gotcha in this circumstance, but maybe it's not a gotcha, right? Maybe it's not a gotcha at all. So here's what I will show you. I'm going to show you two things, okay? So in the United States of America, also, by the way, here, promote this blast off tweet, okay? Here, here you go. But in the United States of America, a lot of hay is made about people demanding a ceasefire. People keep saying they're, supporters of Hamas. People keep saying that, their goals must be to eradicate Israel and yada, yada, yada. Right? A ceasefire implies that everyone stops firing. Exactly. So it's not just elections in PA. We'll talk about all the elections. Just chill. So, what is really interesting here is that Jake Tapper made this video talking about how Israel sees the parades and rallies for the ceasefire, and they see no parades and no rallies for the return of hostages or the removal of Hamas. Now, this is a very American perspective. You want to know why? Because there are protests in Israel. Brian and Jake are going to be shocked to find out that the ceasefire protests are being done in Israel by the family members of the hostages. I fucked that up. I butchered this. Holy shit. Can I edit this? Jesus Christ. It looks so bad. Anyway. Yeah. While Brian and Jake Tapper are fucking talking about protests about ceasefire, fucking bullshit. Except you know who's demanding a ceasefire in Israel? The motherfucking family members of the hostages. Why would they be demanding a ceasefire? Because they understand that right now the gravest threat presented towards the hostages beyond a Hamas execution, okay, which has not happened at all, as a matter of fact, If they were to execute the hostages, they would have done it very publicly, because that's like, to show how serious they are. That's what normally happens in a situation like this, in a fucking bank robbery hostage situation. That's how it would happen. Okay? They know that the gravest threat for the hostages is coming from Israeli bombing campaigns, especially bombing campaigns that hit the tunnel systems, because the hostages are not above ground. They're in the fucking tunnel systems alongside Hamas militants. It's fucking ridiculous. This is the reason why those who are demanding a ceasefire in Israel are the fucking family members of the hostages, because they do not want the hostages to die. They do not want their family members to die. That's it. So it's so fucking weird that in America, we are thousands of miles away championing the death and destruction of more hostages without pushing for a fucking ceasefire. It's very odd. It's a very odd situation. Now, obviously, the overwhelming majority of Israelis are not exactly on board with a ceasefire either, okay? But those who are protesting in Israel are literally the closest to the problem. They're closest to the hostages. Anyway, so the only people who seemingly care about the ceasefire in Israel are the ones who are directly related to the hostages, because they do not want their family members to be blown up in a tunnel system next to Hamas militants. Okay? So, I don't want anybody to fucking misunderstand the situation. Here, let's watch
Simple
this.
question for you. How many innocent Palestinian civilians, men, women and children, does Israel have to slaughter? How many war crimes does Israel have to commit? How much death and destruction does Israel have to visit on the people of Gaza and Palestine before you will call for and impose sanctions on Israel and expel the Israeli ambassador from this country and call for the immediate referral of Israel to the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity and war crimes?
100%.
Because in front of the world, by their own admission, Israel is committing war crimes. They have stated it publicly. This isn't a matter of opinion. They declared their intention to force, through the threat of military bombardment, more than 1 million, and it is now well more than 1 million, Palestinians from their homes in northern Gaza and ethnically cleanse them. A crime against humanity. They stated publicly, and have done it in front of the eyes of the world, the intention to deny to 2.2 million people water, electricity, medicine, life-saving equipment in front of the eyes of the world, and they're doing it. And every minute, children are being slaughtered by their artillery, their relentless bombardment of residential complexes, of hospitals, of schools, of civilian infrastructure. They just go on and on and on, and you do nothing. Nothing. Words of concern, but no action to hold them to account. And it is clearly premeditated war crimes and genocide. Genocide. We have Jewish people in the United States and Canada, around the world, and Israel calling it genocide. Scholars, academics saying this is genocidal. Let me quote you a few things. Israeli general, quote, "Human animals must be treated as such. There will be no electricity and no water. There will only be destruction." Yoav Gallant, a minister, says we are fighting human animals. We will, quote, "act accordingly. We will remove, quote, every restriction on the IDF." Smotrich, another minister, there is no such thing as the Palestinians. The president of Israel,
Smotrich is like the final solution guy. For those of you who don't know, straight up the final solution guy. I mean, he's very openly written about this. But also he's the now finance minister and settler himself. And also, I think he's a settler. And also is the guy who, by his own admission, is a fascist homophobe who literally, no, that's not the Nuke Gaza guy. There's a lot of Nuke Gaza guys in Israel. He's not the latest Nuke Gaza guy. He's the guy who fucking said that his wife would never be able to give birth next to an Arab woman because why would he want to give birth next to this Arab child who will inevitably become a terrorist and try to kill her? So just to get you to, develop a better understanding of the situation here, like these are the people in positions of power. They say things about Palestinians that are just as ruthless as what you hear from like the leadership of Hamas that constantly gets like put forward, and not even like the civil governance branch, but specifically like the most militant factions within Hamas, which is already like a militant movement regardless. So the idea that like these are, first of all, completely unelected at this point, individuals who aren't exactly the most popular people to begin with. The idea that like those guys represent the entirety of the Palestinian population, meanwhile the Israeli elected members of the Knesset are not, is fucking insane. I can give you a little bit more about the new Israeli far right, about Smotrich in general, but let's finish off this Irishman.
Refers to the people of Gaza and says they are all responsible. Before October the 7th, Netanyahu appeared in front of the UN General Assembly with a map of Israel that had removed all references to Palestine. A clear declaration of intent to destroy the Palestinian people and steal all of their land. 6,000 Palestinians killed between 2008 before October the 7th. Thousands of Palestinians hostage in administrative detention without trial. When are you going to move beyond words of concern and impose sanctions and expel the Israeli ambassador of this apartheid murderous state?
Right. The Irish are based on this issue as always, and have always maintained a dual struggle perspective. And so on this top of the hour, we hand it back to the Irish for having a good approach to this matter. As always, consistently and loyally in Europe, been supporters of Palestinians. And if you... Down. Down. Anyway, at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Or get gifted a sub. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. Judy, high five. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Yeah. Very good foreign policy. Anyway, so getting back to the issue at hand, though, I forgot what I was talking about before the Irishman came in and changed the course of the broadcast. But here, anyway, let's learn more about Bezalel Smotrich.
Bezalel Smotrich is now one of Israel's most influential lawmakers. He's part of a generation of religious Zionists taking over Israeli politics and bringing their extreme ideas into the mainstream. Here's what you need to know about him. Smotrich is a staunch advocate for illegal settlements on Palestinian land. He was born in one, raised in one, and currently lives in one. At a young age, he received his education at religious Zionist schools and later studied to become a lawyer, but he made a name for himself as a far-right agitator. In 2005, he was arrested for protesting against the Israeli disengagement plan in Gaza, where 21 illegal settlements were dismantled. Smotrich spent 3 weeks in jail for allegedly planning to block roads and damage infrastructure to block Israel's withdrawal, but was later released without charge.
10 שנים אחרי הגירוש החמור והמיותר מגוש קטיף וצפון השומרון, היום כשכל ילד במדינת ישראל יודע שהגירוש היה איוולת, שחוץ ממדינת חמאס בעזה וחצי מדינת...
Yeah, so this is the classic attitude from the Israeli far right, which is that like we have to have a permanent settlement in these places and slowly but surely ethnically cleanse these areas and maintain a permanent occupation in these areas, because if we don't do that, then it's a security concern. Two questions, two ways that Israel will always defend its posture and the continuation of its apartheid strait. Okay? One, security concerns. This is a matter of security. We must continuously engage in ethnic cleansing, and we must continue the maintenance of a violent apartheid state because it's a matter of security. We have to keep doing this. If we don't do it, they'll kill us all. The second is always demographic concerns. Okay? If you ever hear a liberal Zionist talk about these issues, they basically are saying similar things to what Smotrich is saying ultimately, and the actions of the Israeli state reflect the most far-right elements, no matter what happens. If you look at it historically, it's always the most furthest right, the most ultra-Zionist components. However, the reasoning behind it, from the liberal perspective, will never be like blood and soil propaganda in the same way that, like, far-right individuals will say blood and soil propaganda. They say it's a matter of security. It's a security concern. It's a security concern. It's a security concern. Okay? Why are you crying? Quiet. No. As soon as her treat is done, she starts crying. She's like, I want to get off this bed, please. When I say I feel a ceasefire is unnecessary, I don't mean that the occupation can continue in Gaza and the West Bank. I just mean that Hamas actively advocates for the death of all Jews, and it's just because they don't have the same amount of resources as Israel doesn't make the good on that it is any less troubling. Brother, you have to look at actions and reactions, okay? You have to look at the history of how Hamas came into a militant formation, what their military objectives were, what their militant objectives were. If you simply just cast aside everything and say, no, it's just Jew hatred, and that's the reason why they're operating in the way that they're operating, then yes, you are simply trying to, from a very liberal perspective, engage in exactly what I'm mentioning, which is security concerns. This is a matter of national security. That's why the bombing campaigns need to continue. This is not a solution. There is no solution to Hamas that does not revolve around political solutions, okay? Just like if the roles were reversed, it would still be the exact same circumstance. If Hamas, which is identical in their 1988 charter to the consistent Likud principles, and even the furthest right elements, as a matter of fact, and the way that they talk about Arabs, the way that they talk about non-Jews in Israel and everywhere else, they're two sides of the same coin in your from your perspective. If you want to fucking look at it from an outsider's view, it's identical, right? Hamas themselves apparently are in the business of killing all Jewish people, according to the Israeli state. Are there anti-Semitic people inside of Hamas, especially in the leadership? Certainly, of course there are. Just like there are a tremendous number of anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab motherfuckers in the Israeli Knesset. The difference, however, is that those guys keep getting elected over and over again. Hamas does not. That's number one. Number two, Hamas is a militant organization that has only increased its violence as a direct response to the increase of the violence within this apartheid regime. The idea that they're doing this specifically because like they just simply do not have the power to kill all Jewish people, but if they had more weapons, they would, is ridiculous. They killed a shit ton of Bedouin people too in the October 7th militant operation inside of Israel proper. They killed a shit ton of Arabs too. They indiscriminately killed civilians in an act of terror, in an act of brutal terror, as a matter of fact, 100%. They killed a bunch of people from Nepal. They killed a bunch of workers. They took hostages that were I believe, from Thailand, right? They weren't just like, oh, are you Jewish? I'm going to kill you. Because in their proof, are you asking me for proof that Hamas 100% didn't just kill Jewish people? Read any fucking article. What are you talking about? Literally read any article. Haaretz, Times of Israel, fucking Jerusalem Post, any article from any outlet that has covered the death toll, and you'll realize, like, they're not just simply they weren't, what do you mean? They've killed Americans. Like, the fuck are you talking about? Hamas are terrorists and nothing can justify it. Literally stop finding excuses. Brother, I understand this. I want to end it. Okay? That's the difference between you and I. I want to end this violence. You want to continue it because you think that it's a reasonable justification for consistently pushing light ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip and a permanent occupation in the West Bank. Okay? This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You cannot end Hamas, just like Russia was never interested in ending the Azov Battalion or even denazifying Ukraine by pointing to the Azov Battalion. There was no real purpose there. That was just a justification for going into Ukraine and taking over more territory in Ukraine. Okay? Occupying parts of Ukraine. That was their goal. That was their actual real goal. I told you from day one that that was a ridiculous lie that they were saying, that they were going to denazify Ukraine. Okay? By pointing to the most extremist nationalist elements within Ukrainian politics and in the Ukrainian defense forces, which was never a good justification, never a real justification. It was just a simple way to propagandize an occupation. Just like you can never denazify Ukraine, not that like there were, not that the entirety of the Ukrainian army was fucking Nazis to begin with, no, but there was no denazifying Ukraine. That was not a real thing. That was just a simple justification for Russia to propagandize their position. The same thing is being done by Israel. There's no de-Hamasifying, or in Israel's own words, denazifying Gaza by blowing up Gaza and permanently occupying Gaza. It just doesn't work. So if you understand that, in relation to your point here, you might find this tweet on denazification in Gaza relevant. Oh, fuck. I've been blocked by this guy, Elint. Let's see. Israel will have the ultimate security control over Gaza Strip after the war. An Israeli diplomatic source said, after the Gaza war, we'll have to undergo denazification to end a culture of wanting to kill Jews, which exists in the Palestinian Authority too. Jesus fucking Christ. This is completely ridiculous, okay? This is in no way, shape, or form any different. I want to actually tweet about this. Hold on. How do you do a screenshot? Isn't it Windows Shift S is the snippet tool? Or is it Control Shift S? Why isn't it working? Windows Shift S is not working. I don't know why. Fuck. Reinstall Windows. Maybe it's not working because it's like, I don't even know. I don't have a print screen button on my. I want to do the snipping tool. Let's see if I can just like open the app myself and then do it like that. There you go. There it is. Okay, hold on. I'm going to tweet about this because I've been thinking about this quite a bit. Something that's very frustrating to me. Territory. This boomer's doing all this to put a Russian SS next to an Israeli one. No, I'm just saying, like, denazifying Ukraine was Russia's ridiculous propaganda for invading Ukraine. Occupying it. This. So why is Westerners? I'm just saying, denazifying Ukraine was Russia's ridiculous propaganda for invading Ukraine and occupying it. So why is it that when Israel makes this ridiculous claim, Westerners are so quick to believe it? People don't get how it's ridiculous of Russia to say that when they have literal Nazi groups in Ukraine killing Ukrainians. No, it's still ridiculous though. I've talked about the Azov battalion and nationalist components within Ukraine far beyond, like way before Russia invaded Ukraine. Okay? On the day of the invasion, I said that the denazification propaganda was a fucking ridiculous one. You cannot denazify a country by occupying it. That's not a real thing. It's a bullshit fucking reason. It's a bullshit justification. Okay? Hamas has zero Nazi influence, though. Your tweet somewhat legitimizes a completely baseless argument. I know. The point is, Hamas is, at least the militant factions of Hamas, are extremists to a certain degree. They're also, their actions are extreme as well. Their actions are brutal. So even if they were fucking literal Nazis, it still wouldn't work. It's ridiculous. We're using Nazi as a catch-all for, at this point, for violent anti-Semitism. Let's clarify that. Yes. Anyway. I see enough war in Ukraine. Both sides are not rocking Nazi shit. Yeah, I know. That's the other part too, which is that you know, the Russian side has plenty of fucking Nazis on their own too. Denazifying Ukraine was their way of selling the war in Ukraine to their own population. Russians have been sold the idea that they are the ones who cleanse the world of Nazis. Outwards, they said it was because of NATO. Yes. Does anyone have my old tweet? I'm gonna post it underneath it, talking about how irredentist or imperialist actions will only create more reactionary forces. Anyway, defanging the core draw of terrorist groups like Hamas is the single best way to dismantle them organically. No need to join a violent propaganda group. There's nothing for them to propagandize against. The people of Gaza and Palestinians in general do not entirely agree with Hamas. The only thing that Israel has done so far, especially over the course of the past like 3 decades, has pushed people into the hands of more violent emancipatory forces, some of which are reactionary, like Hamas, that literally they still don't full-blown agree with, for the record. They don't even agree with it. That's like, but they have nothing. They have no one. What are they supposed to do? They have nothing. They have no voice. They have no say. There's no elections. They're fucking children for the most part anyway. It's ridiculous. My point stands. From the perspective of the Western world, nobody fucking looked to what Russia was saying and agreed with it. Everyone understood exactly what it was. When Russia was claiming that they were denazifying Ukraine, everybody understood that was bullshit. Okay? Everyone understood that was bullshit. Down. But every single fucking, I don't know, man, Republicans bought it. No, they didn't. Republicans don't want to end Nazis anyway. What are you talking about? Republicans bought it. Chatter. The more you talk about people in East Ukraine were denied election and pro-West, people were put in charge of them after Maidan, they removed Russian Republic. Okay. Except Eastern support for Russia is gone. Okay? Outside of LPR and DPR, which already has like resettled, and all of the Ukrainians fucking ran away from LPR and DPR already. But beyond that, there is no fucking Eastern support for Russia in Eastern Ukraine. It's gone. Why the fuck would there be any support for Russia in Eastern Ukraine? Lol, that is not true at all, bro. I'm sorry. Come on, brother. Kharkiv is a great example of this. You had an entire population that was definitely more susceptible to Russian politics or being in the Russian sphere of influence that don't consider it to be the same any longer. Why would they? They blew the fuck up. They blew their homes. They blew up their homes. It is ultimately completely ridiculous. Like, you don't win any fucking favors. That's why I've talked about the difference between Crimea and Ukraine so many fucking times. Kharkiv, sorry, not Kharkiv. Exactly. The areas bombed most heavily are the ethnic Russian areas of eastern and southern Ukraine. Exactly. There is no more fucking support from the people that live there for Russia. They do not see Russians as liberators, no matter how much fucking the Telegram channels you go to tell you they are. Think about it this way, man. Think about it this way. It's pretty simple, okay? A lot of people think it's complicated. It's not complicated. A lot of people think it's complicated. It's not. When someone blows up your fucking building, it doesn't matter. You're not going to go, "Oh, thank you for blowing up my building my patriotism has been instilled in me. I feel so much more confident about living under the banner of Russia now that you blew up my building block and killed my fucking grandmother." Nobody thinks that. No human being operates like that. You would never think that. You could be the biggest dick rider for Russia, and if Russia blew up your fucking apartment complex, you're going to be like, "Oh, fuck this. No, fuck this shit." You're not going to turn around and be like, "Oh, this is really Ukraine's fault for, this is really Ukraine's fault for being in the Western sphere of influence." Like, that's crazy. Like, that, it doesn't work that way. And the irony is, I've said all of this for the past 2 fucking years. I've said all of this nonstop. Okay? Many don't understand it. Many don't give a shit. It's so funny that, like, it's so funny that, like, now it's a point of contention. Yeah, this was what I was referring to. Thank you. Every time an imperialist or irredentist power decides to encroach upon a smaller nation, the most right-wing nationalist elements are seen as emancipatory forces willing to do the violence necessary for liberation. A dangerous prospect for Ukraine stuck between the West and Russia. Careful, you might get clipped again and shown what you were saying to Ukrainians out of context. I know. I'm sorry. Like, there is no honest or earnest occupation of Ukraine. There is no, like, just cause there. There's no way that you can make that argument. I don't agree with it. I never have agreed with it. And I will never agree with it. Okay? As much as I am understanding of America's interest in Ukraine not being honest and certainly certainly to fucking erode their foreign adversaries' military power by using only 5% of our military budget without losing a single American service member. Like, I know that's their real interest and their real goal, and that's why and no influence occurred in peacemaking for Ukraine. Security assurances were made. Everybody acted like Ukraine was going to purge all the Russians and they were going to win back their entire territory. And that was a fucking lie fed to the Ukrainian leadership, who was genuinely interested in emancipation, and it is a just cause, so they fucking took it. I know this from all of my coverage of Kurdish militia groups in the region, for example. This is a very American thing, okay? You arm motherfuckers, you tell them they do have a right. They do have a right to create a nation state for themselves. The Kurds do. You arm them, you train them, and then you sick them on whoever you think is the most valid target at the time. and then you fuck off and you let the Turkish government come in and just wipe them out. Because that's the NATO ally in the situation. I feel like the free flow stream of consciousness makes it a bit harder for liberals trying to understand your perspective. I know. I'm much better in writing, in my opinion. I know. I can do a much better job of just like describing my position if I just fucking simply write it down rather than try to engage in this like free flow conversation. Oh. Anyway. All right, I'm gonna show you guys Smotrich for now while I take Kaya out, and I'm gonna take her. I'm going to take her diaper off because I'm gonna get her to pee outside.
In 2006, Smotrich took part in an anti-LGBTQ march called the Beast Parade, where goats and donkeys were paraded through Jerusalem to mimic the Pride Parade taking place that year. The protest was organized by a group of far-right Haredi Jewish activists that included another young agitator, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Both have since expressed their regret in taking part, but Smotrich has continued to label himself a proud homophobe. In 2015, he joined the Israeli Knesset as a lawmaker, but his controversies didn't end. 2 weeks after an ultra-Orthodox man stabbed 6 people at the Jerusalem Pride Parade, killing a teenage girl, Smotrich accused Israeli media of being controlled by the gay community. In 2016, he called for segregated maternity wards, separating Jewish and Palestinian mothers, saying he doesn't want his wife giving birth next to someone who just gave birth to a baby that might murder her baby in 20 years. Perhaps his most vocal stances are against the creation of any Palestinian state. In fact, he believes Palestinians should be given 3 options: leave, accept rule by a Jewish state, or fight and be defeated. As a lawmaker, he spearheaded a controversial law that legalized the annexation of Palestinian land and banned advocates of the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement from visiting Israel. Outside parliament, his right-wing NGO, Ragavim, has been taking legal action against Palestinians, Bedouins, and other Arabs in Israel and the West Bank for building without Israeli permits, leading to evictions and home demolitions. But despite these extreme views, Smotrich won big at the 2022 elections. His religious Zionism coalition, shared with Itamar Ben-Gvir, was formed with the help of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a means of bringing together far-right Orthodox factions. It now holds a third of all seats in parliament, and Smotrich has emerged as one of its kingmakers. And despite international worries about his hardline views, Smotrich is now pushing Netanyahu to give him the biggest prize in Israel's new government, defense minister. And if he gets his way, his vision for the future of Israel will be one step closer to fruition.
I'm back. Come here. What is this? This video is the...
This is the Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum in Israel, and I want to talk about how this is an architectural example of the way that the Israeli government uses the painful, traumatic history of that period of time to enforce Zionism. What you're seeing here is only part of the museum. The actual exhibit is underneath all of that concrete. This glass up top is a skylight. Here's the actual inside of the exhibit, and I'll talk about how this functions architecturally and what it's trying to actually imply. But first, let me explain how the exhibits work.
I don't know what this is. What is happening here? Why'd you guys send this to me? Can you just explain it? He's talking about how, like, the architecture is the what?
But here's how the exhibit ends. Back in this first picture on the outside, you can see that back here, the building flares up into this like popped collar, right? That's not the front of the exhibit. That is the back. That's where you come out.
I don't care about this shit. Stop sending me stuff like this. Like, it just, like, TikTok is so susceptible to, like, weird shit like this, like, conspiratorial nonsense, because that's just how TikTok is. I suspect that it's going to be like, it's probably going to say something like, even a Holocaust museum that has nothing to do with Israel and is supposed to not have anything to do with Israel still, like, has symbolism built into it that, you know, points to Jerusalem, for example, and it's just another it's a way to in a subtle way, it's another reinforcement that, like, Judaism is entirely married to the Zionist project when it's not. Blah blah blah. I don't care. Okay, I don't. He was raised Jewish and was taught Jewish history. No, I'm not saying he's anti-Semitic. I wasn't saying, I'm not saying he's anti-Semitic. I don't know enough about this TikToker. I'm simply stating that yes, I understand it. Like, every part of the Zionist project since 1948, or even before, well, definitely since 1948, it revolves around just, like, erasing Palestinians from history, or at least, like, trying to reinstill this concept that all Jews have this symbolic and spiritual connection to the land, and that's what it is. It's not true, and it wasn't true in the beginning of the Zionist project in general, and that's precisely why. That's precisely the reason why secular Jews like Theodor Herzl tried to invoke this imagery in an effort to, like, get more people on board. Zionism is also the most successful nationalist project, I think, of all time. Like, there are, I would even go so far as to say, beautiful parts of what Zionism has been able to do, which is, like, take a dormant language and recreate it and adopt it as a mass usage. Like, this is an unimaginable thing. Okay? That's why it's so, reviving Hebrew is unironically a feat in the field of language in general. Like, taking a dormant language and just, like, reinstituting it. Like, it's a very successful project. It is probably the most successful project. It's just, it happened to coincide with the death and destruction of the people that already lived there. So that's the part of the problem. Anyway, Yiddish even rarer. Yeah. From what I understand, I don't know enough about this, but I think they also had, like, it came with also the erasure of Yiddish. But I don't know enough about that. Didn't the formation of Hebrew erase Yiddish? A little bit. Yeah, at least that's how I understand it. Anyway. Look, if you pull yourself out of the equation and don't think about the death and destruction that has happened as a consequence of Zionism, it is truly impressive. The reason why I bring this up is because a lot of people don't know about the death and destruction, and that's why all they see is how impressive this is. And you must understand this perspective as well in order to dismantle an argument for Zionism. You also have to understand what the argument for Zionism actually is, maintaining the positives as well, like recognizing the positives as well. You know, it should not come at the cost of displacing almost 1 million Palestinians. It should not come at the cost of displacing and having a permanent occupation upon 5 million Palestinians, having 6 million Palestinians on top of that, and living in diaspora in a permanent refugee status. I found them. Anyway. Yes, pretty much, because Yiddish was only spoken in Europe pretty much, and you had Jews from all over the world flocking to Israel post-1948. Also, the vast majority of those who spoke Yiddish were killed in the Holocaust. The language was already dying due to the Holocaust, but Hebrew replacing it took out the remaining few. I found them. Üç. Yeah. So, yeah. Where the fuck was I? Okay, let's talk about, is there a Hamas tunnel under the Qatari hospital in Gaza?
Time and again, the Israeli army has accused
This guy's voice is so funny to me, like the serious Al Jazeera investigation guy. Time and time again, the Israeli army has accused Hamas of using hospitals. In this analysis, we will show you that the Israeli army is lying.
Accused Hamas of using hospitals as convenient cover for its fighters and elaborate system of tunnels. Thus, it says, making hospitals fair game for its bombing campaign in Gaza. The list of hospitals Israel says are complicit include Al-Shifa Hospital, Al-Quds Hospital, and most recently, the Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Hospital for rehabilitation and prosthetics.
Yeah, you show me hospitals, I see Hamas tunnels.
Also
you know what I'm
known
saying?
as the Qatari Hospital. On November 5th, the Israeli army published a video on X, formerly Twitter. It claims to reveal the entrance to a tunnel used by Hamas fighters.
I accidentally
Seen
ran
here in
a 3-minute ad break here, so I'm not going to run at the top of the hour.
this Israeli drone footage. It shows something resembling a hatch or portal near the hospital's entrance. Enter Al Jazeera's digital investigations team, Sanad. It
Enter
decided
Al Jazeera's digital
to
investigation
take a
team.
closer look at the video behind this latest Israeli allegation. It started by identifying features surrounding this opening and cross-referencing those features with satellite images to determine its exact location.
Yeah. Damn, bro. These guys are so dumb. Imagine putting a comical Hamas tunnel right here next to the hospital. Like, surely it can't be something else. Okay? Surely it must be a Looney Tunes ass entrance into a tunnel. It must be. It can't be like a fuel depot or anything like that. Which, you know, fairly normal in any kind of civilian infrastructure. Certainly, I immediately, when I see this, when I see a hole next to a fucking hospital, I immediately think that's Hamas. That's Hamas. That's what I think.
The team also uncovered footage filmed during the construction of the hospital, published 8 years ago. One of the clips reveals the construction of an underground, isolated, and enclosed structure in the exact location of the opening in question.
By the way, you don't need all of this. They literally asked the architecture. I mean, not the architecture, sorry. They asked the architect. The fucking civil engineers that worked on building the fucking hospital openly stated that it is a fuel depot next to the fucking hospital.
The video makes plain that the construction Israel alleges to be a Hamas tunnel took place while the hospital complex was being built. According to the images in this archival video, this structure is not only not connected to any underground tunnel system, but after further analysis, our digital investigations team found that this structure is nothing more than a water reservoir.
No, it was not a fuel depot. It was a water reservoir.
To further verify its finding, the team tracked
thought it was a
down
fuel
one
depot.
of the original engineers who worked on the construction of
I was wrong. I apologize.
the Qatari hospital.
عملت لشهور في
I
مشروع
worked on most of
إنشاء
the construction of
المستشفى
Sheikh
الشيخ
Hamad
حمد للأطراف
Hospital.
الصناعية.
Okay, can I just explain something here, though? I don't know if you know this, but, like, one, this is on Al Jazeera. Quite suspicious. I'll have you know that it's Qatar's very own propaganda outlet. And secondly, the man he's asking, he's Arabic. He's speaking Arabic. He's Arab. I No, I'm gonna assume that this is he's probably Hamas himself.
جيش الاحتلال عرض في الجهة الشرقية من المستشفى فوهة خرسانية كان عبارة عن فوهة لخزان مياه تحت الأرض يطل منه فوق سطح الأرض فوهة خرسانية وغطاء معدني وأنبوب للتهوية الذي يستخدم لإخراج وتصريف الهواء بعد دخول المياه إلى الخزان.
By cross-referencing his diagram with the images in the video released by the Israeli army.
Bro, that diagram is shit. Okay, come on.
Our digital investigations team was able to clearly identify a pressure equalization pipe commonly used for war.
That's the craziest part. You want to know something really funny? I think I abused like the ties to like American politics a little bit too much. But like every IDF defender and every unconditional Israel supporter unironically is like behaving in the most QAnon ways possible. Like all of these fucking stupid ass liberals who for years and years shat all over vaccine conspiracists and shat all over QAnon guys are unironically behaving in the exact same way when it comes to Israel, where they just go, well, I saw a hole there, which must mean there's 1,000 Hamas members down there, which means that we have to blow up a hospital. The only difference, however, is that, you know, QAnon motherfuckers, yeah, surely can lead to stochastic terror. It has, except the QAnon level defense for Israel is leading to the unconditional support of the death and destruction of thousands of Palestinians, millions of Palestinians that have been displaced from their homes, that were already displaced from their homes to begin with. That's why they were in fucking Gaza.
Water and fuel tanks, or reservoirs. Its conclusion, the only thing this video confirms, is that there is a water tank on the property, not a tunnel used by Hamas fighters.
Yeah, I don't believe it, dog. I feel like it's you know, this is a comical Hamas tunnel here. QAnon has never been accepted institutionally in the way that BlueAnon has. I mean, there's certainly defenders of QAnon, like lighter defenders of QAnon. But I would say that, yes, BlueAnon is like way more, BlueAnon was way more institutionally defending than QAnon, for sure. I think that like Fox News will have QAnon, Fox News will sometimes have like QAnon guys on, or engage in a lot of like anti-vaxxer conspiracies. And that part is definitely true, but like BlueAnon is a matter of fact. Like BlueAnon was always described as matter of fact. What the fuck is BlueAnon? It's just like a joking way that we refer to liberals who like lost their minds under the Trump administration, who thought that like Russia was directly responsible for Donald Trump winning, and everything that happened under the Trump administration, Pootie Poo was doing. Just fucking ridiculous shit. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Rashida Tlaib in a second. The fucking most disgusting shit. These people are monsters, dude. I hate American politics. American politicians are fucking monsters. But before we get to that, let's talk about White House's warnings to Israel over post-war plans.
Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility because we've seen what happens when we don't have it.
1 month into the war with Hamas, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is giving his first indication of Israel's plans for Gaza after the fighting ends. This comes as more airstrikes could be seen slamming Gaza City overnight. The IDF says it has secured a Hamas military stronghold in northern Gaza and struck a cell of about 10 terrorists in an anti-tank missile cell. Joining us now is White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby. Admiral, I appreciate your time. I want to start with what we just heard from the Prime Minister. There has been a lot of discussion about what would happen after the military conflict is done. The president has made very clear he believes that holding Gaza, that essentially a reoccupation is not a good idea. What was your take on what you heard from the Prime Minister?
Well, the president still believes that a reoccupation of Gaza by Israeli forces is not good. It's not good for Israel, not good for the Israeli people. I will let Prime Minister Netanyahu speak to whatever his post-conflict plans are. I can tell you, though, that one of the conversations that Secretary Blinken's been having in the region is, what does post-conflict Gaza look like? What does governance look like in Gaza? Because whatever it is, it can't be what it was on.
Damn, that's crazy, dog. Maybe we should have fucking, I don't know, had that conversation before, like, killing 10,000 Palestinians. Or 12,000 Palestinians. I don't even know what the latest numbers are at this point. It's just like keeps fucking increasing every goddamn day. It's been 30 fucking days. Perhaps like it's important to discuss these sorts of things before we do ethnic cleansing, but of course not.
October 6th. It can't be Hamas.
One of the country governments is Saudi Arabia. They're hosting a summit of Muslim leaders this weekend. There are reports that Iran's President Raisi will attend that summit. What does that tell you? What's your response to his attendance?
I don't know that it tells us anything too specific, Phil. I think we're going to have to wait to see how this plays out and see what kind of a role, if they actually show up, what kind of role they play. I mean, what our perspective is, Iran is a destabilizing actor in the region. They support groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. They're supporting these militia groups that continue to fire rockets at our bases in Iraq and in Syria, and they're also supporting Putin's war in Ukraine. So it's difficult for us to see where Iran would have some sort of meaningful, constructive, productive discussion about conflict resolution at this point, given that they're the arsonists here. But again, we'll have to see what happens at this meeting this weekend.
You mentioned the rocket attacks on U.S. personnel. There have also been one-way drone attacks as well. I believe there's as many as 38 or 39 U.S. personnel who have been injured in those attacks or a number of attacks that have occurred. Does the U.S.
Wait, what? One dude died of like heart complications. Like what are you talking about? That's wild, dude. Like those are pot shots done on U.S. military bases and shit from, I mean, whatever.
Best believe that at this point, the threshold for an expanded conflict has not been crossed yet.
We are still working very hard to keep this conflict from widening, deepening, escalating. The attacks on our troops obviously are deeply concerning. You've seen us retaliate in the last week or so. We'll evaluate what we're going to do in terms of next steps. We're obviously going to do whatever we have to do to protect our troops in Iraq and in Syria, make sure that we make a strong statement about force protection and how much that means to us. But we haven't seen another nation state or actor move in demonstrable major muscle movement ways to try to deepen and widen this conflict as yet. That's one of the reasons why the president has added so much more force posture to the region now, including an Ohio-class submarine, which is now in the Central Command area of responsibility. We're going to keep watching this. If we have to make additional force posture changes, well, we'll do that too.
Did you think you'd see the day where...
That's awesome. There's no... First of all, this is Yemen erasure. That's number one, okay? You're doing Houthi erasure, and I don't appreciate it, okay? They're saying Houthis are not big players, okay? And I don't know about you guys, but I watched that music video, and that shit was fire, okay? I can't speak on the way that the Houthis have been moving so far, but that music video was fire. So saying that like there's no movement happening from regional actors, it's kind of fucked up. Don't act like don't act like that's not movement in either direction. Okay. But what he's talking about is of course like the IRGC and specifically Hezbollah in Lebanon. And he's right. There is no movement, or there is no extra movement from Lebanon. That's what the primary takeaway was from the Nasrallah speech.
CENTCOM would tweet out a picture of an Ohio-class submarine in transit.
Well, look, it's...
Yes, the guy, I'm pretty sure the guy that died from a heart attack was the only U.S. Citizen recently killed in these events.
You know, as you know, it's rare
Unless you're factoring in, like, the U.S. Gazans that have been killed, in which case, I don't know what those actual numbers are. There's probably much larger, but the only, like, American contractor that died from a heart attack in they made it seem like it was directly related to like being bombed in a shelter, but I don't know.
For the United States Navy or our combatant commanders to talk about where our submarines are and what they're doing. But in this case, I think it makes perfect sense when we're trying to send a strong signal of deterrence to actors in the region so that they don't widen this conflict, to let them know that we've got yet additional military capability at the ready to defend our national interests.
The president spoke with the prime minister again yesterday. They've been speaking on a very regular basis.
Saying Houthis got a space program is wild, though. How do they have ballistic missiles? One, Iran. And secondly, they don't have a space program. I didn't understand this either at first. I thought it was like, I legitimately did not understand it at all. But now I know that they have missiles that can reach all the way to Israel, all the way from Yemen, and those missiles they fly all the way up into, well, I mean, it's not like space, but they fly way above the clouds, I guess. I don't know the exact number. I don't know the exact like height that they get up to, but it's like it's in outside of the atmosphere, as far as I understand.
Admiral, I was struck. The former Prime Minister Ehud Barak gave an interview yesterday where he was talking about that he could see the window closing for the military operation due to the pressure from regional allies, the pressure also of domestic political pressure at the United States. Has the president conveyed that to the prime minister, that there is a very small window of time to conduct these operations?
Well, I won't talk about the private conversation between the president and the prime minister. They have a routine now sort of dialogue as these operations are ongoing. And again, they spoke again yesterday. One of the things that the president made clear to the prime minister is that we're going to continue to stand with Israel. We're going to continue to make sure that they have the security assistance they need, the tools, the weapons, the capabilities to go after Hamas. That hasn't changed since October 7th, and it's not going to change going forward.
I wanted to play for you sound from Jordan's Queen Rania. She's been very outspoken. She's also, Jordan is a very critical ally in the region for the United States. Take a listen.
If you manage to eliminate all of Hamas, what next? The root cause of this conflict is an illegal occupation. It is routine human rights abuses, illegal settlements, disregard to UN resolutions and international law. If we do not address these root causes, then you can kill the combatant, but you cannot kill the cause.
She's right, 100%. This is what I've been saying.
She is of Palestinian descent. I guess the question is to that point, and for regional leaders who say the same thing, what is the response right now?
So we certainly agree that Hamas isn't just an organization. There's an ideology behind this terrorist group that slaughtered 1,400 Israelis on the 7th of October. And while you can go after the leaders and eliminate the leaders and disrupt the network, and we've proven that we know how to do that against groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, it is difficult to kill the ideology. Now, she's also talking about history here and how things ended up the way they did in Gaza and the West Bank. And I think that the history is obviously long, it's complicated, it's complex, and it's good for all of us to remind ourselves of how we got here. But it's also important to remember that we still believe in a two-state solution. In the United States, President Biden still supports this as a viable vision and a promise for both a Jewish democratic state and a free and independent Palestinian state.
A Jewish democratic state. Okay, dog. So you want an ethno state. That's cool. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, that's already happening, okay? There's never been a two-state solution. There's only been one state, and that is a Jewish democratic state that is an apartheid state. It's fucking ridiculous, okay? The idea that, like, our actors, our State Department actors, our National Security Council spokesperson is saying this is, of course, it's expected because they're pieces of shit, but very frustrating.
That is the way we believe that both sides can live in peace and security going forward. And even though we're in the middle of a conflict, Phil, president hasn't given up on that, and we're continuing to talk to our partners throughout the region about how to get back on track to some sort of viable two-state solution.
Hassan pro-Trump now confirmed. Yeah, I love Trump, dude. Definitely. Yeah, that's why I'm so critical of the Joe Biden administration for just completely following the Trump administration's policies on the continuation of the Abraham Accords and having like psychopathic, ultra-nationalist, ultra-Zionist motherfuckers in positions of power that are personally invested. Like they just have a deep investment, like Joe Biden, in the continuation of a Jewish ethno-state in the region. Like, I do legitimately believe that a major problem here is America's State Department interests aligning perfectly with a Jewish ethno-state. That's what it is. That's all this is, for the most part. You are distorting the facts. Really? I'm distorting the facts? What facts am I distorting? Donald Trump accelerated the conflict greatly, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, legitimizing what Israel has wanted to do for 3 decades now. Even longer than 3 decades. It's fucking bullshit. The Abraham Accords was the Donald Trump administration's project. Ripping up the Iran denuclearization agreement was the Donald Trump administration's project. Okay? Every move made towards regional stability by I don't know, fucking normalizing relations or moving towards normalizing relations with Iran was cast aside at the behest of Israeli interests in the region. Trump did that. I think a lot of people don't know. There is bipartisan consensus on this stuff, okay? It's very stupid to act like that's not the case. Donald Trump was so hardline anti-Palestinian or so hardline anti-Muslim that Israel had to lobby the government to continue sending aid to the Palestinian Authority. So shut the fuck up. In 2018, it was Israel that said, hey, you can't completely cut off aid from Palestinians. Like that's a necessity for our national security interests. But again, you think October 7 is the first day that this conflict started. It was an unprovoked attack. So, of course, your understanding of this is quite trivial, like a baby. You're like a baby. You're like a child. And I don't even fault you for thinking about this like a child, because that's what the media wants you to think. That is what every like legitimate center of information is pumping out. Don't think about anything. Don't think about this conflict from a historical frame of reference. Like, think about it as like, this is the unprovoked attack. What is this guy doing? Turkey has done the exact same things as Israel in its history. No, it's not in reality. It committed ethnic cleansing to become a Muslim-only country, including multiple pogroms. So claiming it is secular or democratic is utter bullshit. How many Christians are left in Turkey since its establishment 1 century ago? I love when motherfuckers say dumb shit like this as an own. One, I've routinely fucking criticized the Turkish government for its treatment of Kurdish people in general, specifically its treatment of people living in the fucking northern Syrian corridor as a matter of national security interest. I literally talked about it earlier today with respect to America constantly telling Kurds that they can have an ethno-state, or not an ethno-state, but have a nation-state, and that they deserve it. 35 million Kurds live in fucking diaspora, okay? And not only that, but also America always leaves them behind to get fucking destroyed. Leaves them behind to get destroyed by the Turks. Here's the problem. And there is a tremendous amount of mistreatment of Kurdish people in Turkey, okay? This much is 100% true, especially in Kurdish populated regions, right? There's always military actions occurring in these areas. Okay, Kurdish terrorism. It's the biggest fear, or was the biggest fear, for Turks for a very long time. Okay, the reality is Turks have been quite brutal. I did not even mention the Kurds one time. I'm not talking to you, Hassan. I've read more about this than all of chat combined. Okay, shut the fuck up and listen. Okay? Listen to the words I'm about to mention. If, and I think every Kurdish person in this community would probably agree to this, if the treatment of Palestinians resembled the treatment of Kurds in Turkey, virtually the entire world would celebrate that as a massive step in the right direction. In spite of the brutality of the Turkish government against Kurds, okay, the situation for Palestinians is so dire and it's so bad that that would be a dramatic jump in the right direction that literally Americans and the entire fucking Western world would look at that and go, look at what we did. We did it. We did it, guys. We solved it. Conflict's over. We solved it. It's peace. Look, all the Kurds in the chat are saying, like, this is 100% true. It is unimaginable. There is no comparison to this historic wrong. Okay? Turkey is 99.5% Muslim according to their own stats. I don't understand what the point you're trying to make here. Okay? Like, is the argument that if you're a Christian living in Turkey right now, there's like fucking pogroms happening or you're somehow a lesser citizen? Because there is no codified, institutionalized ethno-state regimen in Turkey in the way that it operates inside of Israel proper. Unless you're going back to directly the Armenian genocide, okay, which did happen, and I've never said that it did not happen. Ethnic displacement and ethnic cleansing of Armenians. I don't know what the fuck the point you're trying to make is here. Right now, if you're Palestinian, if you're a Palestinian citizen of Israel, okay, part of the 23%, you're a Palestinian citizen of Israel right now, okay, you have less rights than Jewish citizens of Israel. Like, it's codified. It's in the Constitution. It's in their, this has been voted on. This has been deliberated on endlessly. This is before we even talk about the 5 million Palestinians living in Gaza and in the West Bank. What a ridiculous take. There's literally no resemblance. I'm ethnically Kurdish and my parents, grandparents had the chance to move to any city in the country and we are considered normal citizens of the country. I studied in state schools without any problems. Yeah, there's no comparison that you can make. If all Palestinians, first of all, like, you cannot make this comparison to most countries. Why? Because Israel doesn't allow any Palestinian outside of the boundaries of Israel to even be able to, like, get married into Israeli citizenship. Like, think about that. It's just completely ridiculous. Like, there's no, it's like fucking Japan is incredibly xenophobic, and Japan has a better immigration process for non-Japanese citizens than Israel does for Arabs. It's one of the most xenophobic countries on the fucking planet. Their policies of xenophobia are so damaging that it's literally killing its own population. Okay? They have a massively aging population. It's a gigantic problem due to this hyper xenophobic perspective that they have about immigration, right? They're killing themselves. They're killing their own country. And even then they have a more just process because at least you can become a fucking citizen. Huh. You can never get a Japanese passport if you're not born Japanese, and if you have to choose at age 18, if you're half Japanese, you can get a permanent residence though, but never a citizen. That's what I mean though. But like, you can't do that. You can't do that for Israel. That's not a thing that happens. You can't do that for Israel. You can't even do that. And I use Japan specifically because it's the most like egregious. And also, there is no, as far as I understand, there is no legitimate law in the books that says that you could technically refuse Arabs from living in the neighborhood if you felt like it. Like in Japan, there's no like, oh, non-Japanese people can't live in this neighborhood. As far as I understand it, it's not codified. There's racism, of course. I'm using Japan as the most extreme example of like, I guess like technically permissible xenophobia and racism. It's not permissible, by the way. It's just another American ally, so we don't give a shit. Does that make sense? Do you understand? Abdullah Gül is Kurdish. Shut the fuck up and compare the two situations where Israel has an Arab president or anything similar. Brother, I don't know. I love when Turkish people fucking don't understand the points I'm making in English, so then they fucking yell at me and like, and basically say the same thing I'm saying, but like repeat it in the chat by being angry. Also, it doesn't matter. Having a Kurdish person in a position of power does not change the reality. Okay? Like Israelis always say, oh, there's a Palestinian citizen of Israel in the Supreme Court. Like that doesn't change the reality. It's still fucking codified. There's still like permanently codified racist ass policies against Palestinians living inside of Israel, okay? Anyway, by no means am I saying that the situation for Kurds in Turkey is good or just, okay? I was simply making an argument that it's so ridiculous. The situation is so ridiculous for Palestinians, so unimaginably cruel that like if their conditions resembled Kurds in Turkey, it would be a dramatic improvement. It would be celebrated. Okay? It would be celebrated as an incredible feat, an accomplishment towards peace. Meanwhile, what are we dealing with in America? In the wake of tens of thousands at this point, dead Palestinians, many are women, children, and the elderly. Not that it's okay to kill, like, enemy combatant aged men either. Schools have been blown up. Hospitals have been bombed relentlessly. Okay? And what are we doing here in America? We're, one, sending more missiles, $325 million worth, because, Israel's supply is diminishing. So we have to give them more missiles. We always have room for more missiles. And what are our politicians doing? One, refusing to hear the cries for a ceasefire, the reasonable demands that people are making on the ground. Hundreds of thousands of people all around the country and almost 1 million people all around the Western world, and tens of millions, if you consider the Muslim world as well, have taken it to the fucking streets to demand a ceasefire and an end to the occupation. This is a just cause. This is moral. This is right. Righteous. What are our politicians doing? Not listening to a single fucking thing. What are they doing? Continuously going, la, 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 I can't hear you, shut the fuck up. You love Hamas, you love terrorism, you love Hamas, you love terrorism. They're also working to censure the one Palestinian congresswoman. We're not even hiding the racism. The Republicans turned around and put forward a bill that was never going to pass anyway, but it was still, it had 10 co-authors or 10 co-sponsors that would bar Palestinian immigration into the country. Immediately, they were like, no, I'm Representative Zinke, and I love being racist. Like, shut the fuck up, bitch. Nobody wants to go to Montana. Suck my cock. No Palestinians going to Montana, you fucking racist piece of shit. You fucking stupid donkey. Suck my dick. stupid fuck. Oh, I have to be extra racist. I can't be outdone by the Israelis. And then the rest of Congress is moving in this direction. Here's what Representative Rashida Tlaib had to say. One of the bravest Congress people, one of the bravest Congresspersons.
I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My city, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity.
Reported for Racism Brave, she's a traitor, and once she is voted out, we need to file a lawsuit, says Neckbeard Alpha. I am reminded that you will never have a moment of happiness for the rest of your life. You will most likely die alone, miserable, not realizing why all of your immediate family members stop talking to you. And it is your own doing. I want you to understand. You are a miserable, worthless person, and you are sad and pathetic, and your entire life, your anonymous existence online has been to try to make people even feel a fraction of the misery that you experience on a daily basis. And when one day you will realize that that has pushed you into a further pit of misery, okay? You do not need to get a vasectomy because your mouth operates in that in that direction anyway, making it so that you will never have a next of kin, and you will die alone.
Ethnicity should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. Why? What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censor me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the president to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings.
Ridiculous.
I'm the only Palestinian American serving in Congress, Mr. Chair, and my perspective is needed here now more than ever. I will not be silenced, and I will not let you distort my words. Folks forget I'm from the city of Detroit, the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, where I learned to speak truth to power even if my voice shakes. Trying to bully or censor me won't work, because this movement for a ceasefire is much bigger than one person. It's growing every single day. There are millions of people across our country who oppose Netanyahu's extremism and are done watching our government support collective punishment and the use of white phosphorus bombs that melt flesh to the bone. They are done watching our government, Mr. Chair, supporting cutting off food, water, electricity, and medical care to millions of people with nowhere to go. Like me, Mr. Chair, they don't believe the answer to war crimes is more war crimes. The refusal of Congress and the administration to acknowledge Palestinian lives is chipping away at my soul. Over 10,000 Palestinians have been killed. Majority were children. But let me be clear. My criticism has always been of the Israeli government and Netanyahu's actions. It is important to separate people and governments, Mr. Chair. No government is beyond criticism. The idea that criticizing the government of Israel is anti-Semitic sets a very dangerous precedent, and it's being used to silence diverse voices speaking up for human rights across our nation. Do you realize what it's like, Mr. Chair, for the people outside the chamber right now, listening in agony to their own government dehumanizing?
This guy, brilliant take, man. After ceasefire, I wonder who will shoot next. Yeah. Are you implying that it will be Hamas? Is that what you're saying? So what happens? Okay, then Israel continues this bombing campaign. Things change dramatically. Like what? You think like a ceasefire changes the outcome for Palestinians? No. Like, do you think a ceasefire implies the dismantling of the Zionist state project, like the ethno state? No. Do you think it turns around and a ceasefire turns around and turns into 400,000 settlers leaving the West Bank? No. Israel is still going to be able to maintain its apartheid state. Don't worry. It's just that we're saying maybe we should fucking dial it back on the ethnic cleansing, huh? Too much to ask.
Humanizing them. To hear the President of the United States, we helped elect, dispute death tolls as we...
Dismantling of corrupt Islamic belief. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it's the corrupt Islamic belief that is at play here and not an apartheid regime, for sure.
See video after video of...
This is why I always say, man, it's just straight up just racism, dude. It's literally like, it's a dude being like, I have the most Hitlerian thoughts you've ever heard. Here's my perspective on the matter. Okay?
Dead children and parents under rubble. Mr. Chair, do you know what it's like to fear rising hate crimes, to know how Islamophobia and anti-Semitism makes us all less safe, and worry that your own child might suffer the horrors that 6-year-old Wadia did in Illinois? I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My city, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. Why? What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all. We cannot lose our shared humanity, Mr. Chair. I hear the voices of advocates in Israel, in Palestine, across America, and around the world for peace. I am inspired by the courageous survivors in Israel who have lost loved ones, yet are calling for a ceasefire and the end to violence. I am grateful to the people in the streets for the peace movement, with countless Jewish Americans across the country standing up and lovingly saying, "Not in our name." We will continue to call for a ceasefire, Mr. Chair, for the immediate delivery of critical humanitarian aid to Gaza, for the release of all hostages and those arbitrarily detained, and for every American to come home. We will continue to work for a real lasting peace that upholds human rights and dignity of all people and centers in peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, and censures no one, and ensures that no person, no child has to suffer or live in fear of violence. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censor me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the president to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings. Thank you, and I yield.
It's crazy that I mean, this is something I talk about quite a lot in a broader context, specifically about white supremacy, from the perspective of black people arguing for their own humanity, both historically and in contemporary American society. Like, you have to sit there, if you are not white, if you're from a background that has been historically considered an enemy combatant, you have to sit there in a room full of old white dudes and describe that you are a human being after all, and that your family members are also human beings, and that they don't deserve the cruelty. As a product of the No Child Left Behind Act, I know that Islam is the root of all evil and the only path for democracy is nuking Gaza. Yeah, exactly. It's great, man. Did she just call for every Israeli to be killed, or am I crazy? Yeah, that's definitely what she said. That's what she said. It was crazy when she definitely said those words. Here's Jamal Bowman.
This body needs empathy and compassion for all people, not just people that look like the majority of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And maybe because of your lack of diversity, you lack the
Chatters, they're joking. Okay, calm down.
And emotional ability to recognize diverse opinions.
Some people are saying hyperbolic shit as a joke. Like, everybody calm down. I know tensions
when
are
they
high,
speak truth to power. And you absolutely need to open up your mind to other people and other experiences, especially when they are Muslim and when they are women and when they are people of color. You had a member of your party call my colleague a terrorist, and you didn't censor her. But we're having this conversation now about your interpretation of words.
Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair.
Oh, my God. Here is Jamie Raskin.
So I rise here not in spite of the fact.
Respect. Jamie Raskin speaks in opposition to a resolution to censure Rashida Tlaib.
That I am a Jewish American who supports the Constitution and the Jewish democratic state and hates all the
I mean, I don't agree with him saying that Israel is a Jewish democratic state, because it's not.
Semitic tyrants and
but at least he's still fucking, he's still attacking the censure motion.
Terrorists of the world, from Putin in Russia and Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia to Hezbollah and Hamas. I am here because of these things and because of everything that I believe in and stand for. At this moment when democracy is under siege all over the world, America must stand tall for the Constitution of the United States, and this resolution is about one thing and one thing only.
I like someone went, yikes, he's a little Libby. Yeah, bro, it's fucking Jamie What are you talking about? Yes. A little? Yes, he is like a classic Democrat. What do you mean? Yeah,
punishment of speech. So we have the chance to show the world what the American Constitution.
You can't win shit without having people like Jamie Raskin come to your fucking aid. I hope you understand. He represents a much broader constituency and a much broader coalition in the Democratic Party and the interests of like what all of the Democratic politicians believe and push for.
Means and how we hold fast to our core principles even when we're drawn away from them by our passions and our righteous anger. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. In the very heart of it is our First Amendment, which protects every citizen's freedom of speech and says Congress shall make no law abridging it.
Anyway, I'm glad that he's like taking a stance here. Ukraine waging a stalemated war on credit, paying it back, presumably selling off state assets, does not sound like a good deal for Ukrainians. What is this?
If you can't give us some financial support, okay, please give us a credit and we will give you back money. If you can't give us.
Here's what Ilhan Omar said.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is glaring hypocrisy when you have Republicans on the other side of the aisle trying to create definitions and say Rashida wants to annihilate people, when Max Miller himself went on TV and said we're turning Gaza into a parking lot and we want to annihilate Palestinians. Nobody condemned him on that side of the aisle. What is true here is that every single one of them has not acknowledged the fact that Palestinians are dying in the tens of thousands, but will continue to say it is us who are not acknowledging humanity. Rashida will stand strong.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
The movement will continue for liberation until every single
Gentlelady's time has expired.
has the right to
Gentleman
live
from
in
Maryland
liberty.
is recognized.
Thank you.
Fuck yeah.
Has the
Oh, here's
Rashida
this piece of
Tlaib
shit.
Has the I don't even want to call it the Palestinian flag because they're not a state. They're a territory that's about to probably get eviscerated and go away here shortly.
Like, there's no equivalence, man. There is no equivalence. Like, it's so fucking glaringly obvious, dude. You can say whatever the fuck you want. You can say whatever the fuck you want about Palestinians, no matter how bloodthirsty it is. I've told you this since that faithful evening of 8/21/2019. If you say America deserved 9/11, you will get fucking owned. You'll get banned. People will fucking carry that for the rest of their lives, even if what you're saying is completely valid and understood by now in the 20th anniversary, after the 20th anniversary of America's invasion, and you know, all of our actions, all of our subsequent actions in Afghanistan, Iraq, the war on terror, understood by pretty much everyone that this was blowback. You will get yelled at nonstop. People will still, to this day, people still fucking say Hassan's takes were fucking unacceptable, whatever. He's the America deserved 9/11 guy. He loves terrorism. But if you turn around and say, you know, we should nuke Iran, nobody's going to think about it twice. You might even get elevated to a position of power in American politics.
I fought 3 times in Iraq and Afghanistan. This nation spent 20 years at war, spent over $3 trillion to destroy al-Qaeda, to destroy ISIS, and yet those organizations still exist. So the lesson drawn from that is that you cannot destroy a terrorist ideology with military means alone. You have to have politics, you have to have diplomacy, you have to have humanitarian aid, because you can kill a terrorist, but if you destroy or kill innocent civilians, you create more terrorists in the process.
Yes.
So that is why I am adamant that to support Israel, to do this the right way, we have to put front and center the protection of civilians.
Yeah, 100%. There is no ending an idea, okay? Especially when you're in the wrong. That's the other thing. Israel is in the wrong. America was in the wrong in Afghanistan and in Iraq. So that only created a just cause. It not only created an environment perfectly susceptible for a ton of people to fight for emancipation, a ton of people to fight against the occupation, which then became increasingly more radicalized. Okay? But you also never really address any of these issues. You make things so much worse. Iran is the greatest example of this. Iran is the greatest example of America's wrongs, okay? You create an environment where you have moral permission for the most reactionary elements in a society to have moral permission to become the emancipatory factors. Were the U.S. wrong in Nam? Yes. They were wrong in the Korean War too. Yes, of course. Of course. Yes. America has been in the wrong, whether it's their actual motivations or whether it's their direct actions, since World War II. They did World War II and then they were like, we're riding the wave, dog. Now it's time to fight the real villains. Socialism, communism. And they did it by selling every action by pointing to World War II. America was so in the wrong in Korea that it's considered the forgotten war. We don't even fucking talk about it. Every single time, though, our enemies, even if they are state actors themselves or are being pushed by state actors from our foreign adversaries, they're always terrorists. They're always terrorists. The guys that we arm, fascist militias, for example, who literally are terrorists against other states that have committed the egregious act democratically electing someone who wants to nationalize his extraction industry, or democratically elected someone who wants to ensure that they have some social programs or whatever. The most egregious crime of doing such things democratically means that America is going to go to your country and arm the worst, most psychotic, fascist, bloodthirsty right-wing elements and violently take control over your country.
This is a video of the aftermath of a strike in the Al-Shati refugee camp in Gaza. According to journalists working for CNN, the attack came...
This is an American nurse who got out of Gaza and who describes the desperation she saw.
During intense Israeli
I'm going to go pee real quick.
A bombing Sunday night. The IDF has not commented on the incident. United Nations officials today said 70% of people in the Gaza Strip are displaced, many in living in conditions a statement called, quote, inhumane. The Secretary General said that Gaza is becoming a, quote, graveyard for children. Israel's ambassador to the UN lashed out at the comments, called for the Secretary General's resignation. Emily Callahan is a nurse, activity manager for Doctors Without Borders, MSF. She was evacuated last Wednesday and arrived back in the U.S. just over the weekend. First of all, how does it feel to be out?
A lot of people keep asking me that, and I really don't have a good answer. I obviously have a sense of relief that I'm home and I'm with my family and feel safe for the first time in 26 days, and I'm having a really hard time finding any joy in any of it, because me being safe is the result of having to leave people behind.
People watching this have seen images from Gaza. They've seen the hospital images. They've seen the horror of children dead day after day after day after day.
It's very important. It's very important to have a well-spoken, blonde, white American to speak on behalf of Palestinians. Okay? Why? Because you already know what the broad majority of Americans feel about Palestinians. You fucking have a brown man on there. They're going to go, nope, that's not, I can't understand it. I can't put this in a frame of reference that's appropriate. I can't trust this person. It sucks. It sucks, but it's the truth. It's also one of the other reasons as to why I use a lot of Jewish Israeli scholars as well, some of which are obviously some of the best scholars in the game for an adequate retelling of Israeli history. But the other reason is because there's no other way to contextualize this for those who are not willing to hear a brown person's perspective. It is also one of my advantages as well, something I'm very open about. Me being a white passing, relatively attractive guy is a major benefit to me being able to talk about trans issues in a way that, like, the actual transphobes or those who are in the margins of maybe becoming more transphobic than they actually are can hear. Okay? Because when a trans person advocates for their own emancipation, the transphobic people are just going to look at that and go, no, that's a trans person. I don't trust them. Like, it's just, that's where the underlying resentment begins to begin with. Bro just threw that attraction. I said relatively. I try to use that privilege that I have for good.
I mean, they've seen all the images. But to actually be there and to experience it, you're experiencing all these things which a camera can never capture. So could you just talk a little bit about when you close your eyes at night, what is it you think about?
Yeah, notice how she's not asked to condemn Hamas. Think about that for a second. Why is she not asked to condemn Hamas? Did they ask her to condemn Hamas? Why'd they not ask her to condemn Hamas? Something to consider.
I think the answer to that question, I'll start at KYTC, which was we were relocated about 5 times over the course of 26 days due to security concerns. And one of the places we wound up was the Khan Yunis Training Center. We call it KYTC.
That's when people had evacuated to the south. So you were in the south of Gaza at that
when we
point.
went to below Wadi Gaza line. And there were, by the time we left there were 35,000 internally displaced people living alongside us. There were children with just massive burns down their faces, down their necks, all over their limbs. And because the hospitals are so overwhelmed, they are being discharged immediately after, and they're being discharged to these camps with no access to running water. There's 50,000 people at that camp now and 4 toilets. They're given 2 hours of water every 12 hours.
There's 4 toilets for 50,000 people.
Yes. And that's where we were living too. And they have these fresh, open burns and wounds and partial amputations that are just walking around these conditions. And parents are bringing their children to us going, please, can you help? Please, can you help? And we have no supplies.
When in situations where there are tens of thousands of people and it is a war and people can't feed their kids, things get strange very fast and things get tough very, very fast and people turn on each other. You saw that up close.
At KYTC, the reason we had to leave was because we were starting to be harassed. Desperate people who are losing loved ones right and left are angry. And they would point at me and scream American walking past. And at that point, we had no idea what was coming in the next few days. And they would yell things in Hebrew to see if we were Israeli. They accused our national staff of either being traitors or said, you're pretending to be Arab. We know that you're just pretending to be Arab. Stop lying to us. And our staff had to defend themselves. And we said to them over and over again, you don't have to stay. We understand if you want to leave us. And they said, you are family too, and we're not going anywhere.
Your staff, the Palestinians who worked for MSF, or Doctors Without Borders, were concerned about your safety.
We would have died within a week without them. They are the only reason we are alive.
It's incredible that this took so long to get Americans, sick people, start to move through that Rafah border crossing. It's inexplicable.
And we were desperate. We did a calorie count at one point based on our supplies and figured out that if all of us, there's 50 people with us living in a parking lot now, only ate 700 calories a day. If that's all we had 2 days of food left, and that's it. And our national staff took off. We had no cell service at that point, so we had no idea what had happened to them. There's bombs going off all around us because there's no safe place in Gaza.
Even getting through that Rafah border crossing, what was that like?
They didn't leave our side for a second.
The national staff?
The national
because
staff.
Because they feared for your safety, even at the border crossing.
They made sure they were standing between us and desperate people. They made sure that they were talking to every official that they could find, trying to push us through, trying to get us on the bus, trying to get us out. And we're standing there and we're watching these incredible men who have sacrificed everything for us, who have sacrificed time with their families, their own physical safety, their own water supply they were giving to us. And we're watching them fight to get us across the border, knowing that we were not bringing them with us. And they didn't waver. Ibrahim was right in the front with our passports, fighting so hard to get us on. And we get to Arish that night and find out his parents are dead. They were losing family members and friends.
You said if it wasn't for your national staff, you think you would have been killed by people who were just desperate.
We either would have starved to death or run out of water. They were the ones that negotiated all of that. Gaza's a small city, so everyone knows everyone, and they would call in favors and call their friends and say, who do you know that has food? Who do you know that's open? Where can we get this? And they would drive all over the place to find water. And when we ran out of bottled water in Gaza, they were the ones that were able to figure out that the water truck was coming here at these times, and oh, I know this guy has a grocery store and they still have power sometimes. I think I can probably get something from them. Like when I say we would have starved to death without them, I'm not exaggerating. And in the moments of absolute desperation of civilians, they were steadfast and calm and just talked to them and said, these people are also in the same boat that you are. They have no supplies. They also have no food and water. They are also sleeping outside on the concrete, and did it in such a beautiful way that they were able to talk them down with love and kindness. There was no violence in their heart, and it calmed everyone around them down as well.
Would you go back to Gaza?
In a heartbeat. In an absolute heartbeat. My heart is in Gaza. It will stay in Gaza. The Palestinian people that I worked with, both our national staff in the office as well as my staff at Indonesia Hospital, were some of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. When everything went off and we got the notice to move south of Wadi Gaza.
It's wild to me that like the entire time Anderson Cooper is like, so you're afraid of the barbaric perverts, right? Like, I mean, like they were doing, I'm sure that they were trying to do mass rapes to you, right? I suspect that Hamas was trying to do a mass rape on you and everyone who works at Doctors Without Borders, obviously, because they're barbarian freaks, right? That's who you were afraid of. Anyone who fucking goes to Gaza will tell you that they are infinitely more afraid of the IDF than they are of any Palestinian there. It's so stupid. This narrative doesn't make sense when you think about it more than 3.5 seconds, okay? The idea that, like, Palestinians are being brutalized ruthlessly by Hamas, okay, is not even something that Palestinians can factor in to their equation. You want to know why? Because bombs are dropping on their heads, okay? It's stupid. It's a stupid thing to say. And it's almost always said by those who speak for Palestinians by claiming that they care about Palestinian emancipation, who then say Israel is trying to liberate Palestinians from Hamas. The fuck do you mean?
I was texting my nurses at Indonesia Hospital, and I said, we lost a nurse weekend one. He was killed when the ambulance outside the hospital was blown up. And I was texting them when we got the evacuation orders, and I said, did any of you move south? Did any of you get out? Like, are any of you coming down this way? And the only answer I got was, this is our community. This is our family. These are our friends. If they're going to kill us, we're going to die saving as many people as we can. And I said, if I can ever have an ounce.
For the record, come on, man. I think he's doing a good job to ask her stuff to clear up the misconception. Just having her on air is huge. Dude, how fucking low is the bar, man? You think she's the first Doctors Without Borders doctor that's white that's like actually fucking come out of Gaza? I can show you 100 doctors that are still currently working that or have worked in Gaza. You want to know why I can show you 100 of them? Because I watch Democracy Now! And for years and years, they've been speaking out against the whole headquarters of Hamas is under the hospital. No, the major reason why he's doing that is because maybe he can fucking swing it in a direction that's clippable so that liberal Zionists can still turn around and be like, well, see? Damn, this guy's good.